Okay, welcome everyone. Hello. Have we got some new faces, or am I just getting dottier, more demented? Is it anyone's first visit to the class? No? You. That's okay. All right. Okay, welcome everyone to week 3 of HSC230, Indigenous Health Perspectives. So I think we've sorted out our technological, because we haven't got a camera yet, folks, so a job's been logged. So unfortunately you won't get to see the beautiful skirt that I'm wearing, although probably someone could take a photo and we could put it up. I'll have to take a photograph of our guest speakers so people online can see who's here. So these are the joys, and I use the word very loosely, of teaching online as well as in the classroom. Okay, it gives me very great pleasure because it's been a little bit of a journey getting people from Danila to make it all the way out to Casuarina campus. So I'd like to introduce Michael Spick, and your name has gone completely out of my head, which is really embarrassing. So I'll get you to introduce yourself, and you have to speak into this microphone so the people online can hear, and the people that are watching it later.
Hi everyone, I'm Michael Spick. I'm the Education and Training Officer at Danila. What I do is basically facilitate the professional development and the basically what needs to happen in regards to governance and all that good stuff. I've been working at Danila for 10 months now. As a non-Indigenous person, it has been extremely eye-opening and extremely interesting in regards to actually learning about another culture and actually be enveloped in that. I can't speak from any sort of real authority on it, but I've got Shani Taverna here today. She's a registered nurse, and she's been working at Danila for quite a while.
Sorry, I just need to find out who her family is. Do you have Joe? So that's the Joe? Yeah, mate, that's my mum. Okay.
Sure.
Joe Taverna.
Hi everyone, so I'm Darwin born and bred Indigenous lady working at Danila for 5 years now. My background is I'm a registered nurse. I started off in theatre, that was my passion, and now I'm in primary health. I currently am sitting in the clinical manager's position at Formulat Clinic that we opened up, but I'm doing many other things. So I'm doing CQI, which is continuous quality improvement. So we look at systems and data and try to improve our systems at Danila. I'm also doing compliance, which is handling complaints, staff grievances, and so on. So that's me.
What we've got today is we're going to play the induction video for Danila. Having had several nursing students and med students come through before, they've come back and said, I would have liked to have seen this when I was actually having a lecture in that. So we've taken their advice and we're going, right, let's do this. It's a bit of a long video, but it's got a lot of background and will give you a lot of context in regards to the Indigenous health space, especially in Darwin. So, can I
just to put it in context for people that aren't from Darwin and for people online who are elsewhere in Australia, do you just want to just briefly say what Danila is, and then I know the video will go into more detail here.
So Danila is a Indigenous health service that provides primary health care, but it's a little bit different as it's a one-stop shop. It also provides specialist clinics such as midwives, anything from eye doctors to cardiac, renal. We have a mobile service which goes to all town camps, so that's Tiers 1 mile. We've also recently taken over Bagot, so that's Cadillac Mimarama. So we're dealing with them as well. Yeah, and that's basically about it. That could be
great. Yeah. A lot of our students either from the territory or they're based elsewhere in Australia. So we just And will you have time for questions after? Excellent. All right, let's see if this little experiment works. I'm just going to, people online, I'm just going to switch over to the YouTube video that Nick was just talking about. Aha. Okay, and we're back. All right. Well, that was, I think, I've seen that video before. It's a very informative video and covers a whole, lots of, many topics. So I think gives you a pretty good picture of Danila. Now is your opportunity to ask Nick and Shani any questions. That includes you, Mob Online, if you're still with us, not still lost in Danila land. Now, I'll just remind people in the classroom, if you do have a question, and you're more than welcome, to press the little flashing red button so that it goes green so people can hear you. Okay, questions? Don't be shy. Don't look at me like that. Come on. I'm very glad you're in the class. So it's gone green? Yep.
Yeah, I'll ask a super boring question.
Just say who you are. So
my name's Veronica.
And you're
I'm a student midwife. And I just wonder, how does it fit in with the funding structures for the rest of the NT Health? Is it funded the same way?
So you're funding, you want to know about the funding?
Yeah, how does that?
Yep. Is that flashing green? Yep. Excellent. No, I think it's very relevant because funding's been huge over the years.
So it's funded by the federal government. We get some funding from the federal government, and then we get some funding from the Northern Territory government. So I guess it is kind of funded the same way because the hospital is funded by federal as well. So yeah, and then as well as Northern Territory government. So we have to. It's changing though. So there's a bucket of money for Indigenous health that gets split between all the states and territories. What's happening now is that it could open up to other avenues, so it will no longer be Indigenous funding, it'll just be health funding. So that's something that's on the horizon, which we'll have to fight for.
Very slow.
Yeah, so because of programs like Healthcare Homes is coming out. So Healthcare Homes is basically an Indigenous model, but for Main Street. So I don't know if anyone's heard about that, but that's what's coming out. So it can change how we get money. So with Olga Hadnan on board, with looking at other ways to self-fund ourselves through Medicare. So if they take away Medicare, we'll, then we'll
stuffed.
Yes.
Basically. Put your final point on it.
Sorry, it's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Can I ask how that, if we're trying to close gaps, how that could be justify?
Well, look, I think it's probably a bit too big
And complex
for now, and that's a lot of what we unpack during the course of this unit is, like, we'll talk about the funding for Indigenous health in general, the legacy of policies, and we'll be talking a little bit more about community-controlled health organisations in the rest of the session today, because it's complex, and Shani and Nick can only talk from the perspective of Danila-Dilba really, but what I'm going to do in the rest of the session is try and put it in a national context for you. But funding, suffice to say, funding has been a huge issue. You know, I was involved in not instrumental, but I was certainly around and involved when Danila-Dilba was first set up. And I remember vividly those scenes outside what was ATSIC, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission, when the Danila-Dilba and other Aboriginal community-controlled health organisations were wanting funding to come back from ATSIC into what was OATSI, the Office of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health. So it's been a long and convoluted history. Suffice to say that all Aboriginal community-controlled health services have had to fight very hard to get any funding, and certainly since we've had the current Conservative coalition government, it's been a year-to-year thing. Often the RCHOs don't know what is going to happen in the next financial year, so it's very hard for forward planning and getting any kind of consistency. It's a major issue. And, you know, the sort of more cynical side of me would question what the federal government is actually trying to do to promote so much consistency and, at the very best, uncertainty. So to answer your question, it's a bit hard to answer that simply and shortly without getting on the soapbox. Any other questions? Anyone got any questions online? Is anyone there? Are you all there? Anyone? Any other questions? It's a really good chance, remembering assignment 2 for those of you who may or may not be choosing Danila-Dilba or a similar organisation. Speak now. Oh, that's good. So questions, people. You're missing a golden opportunity, because I think in 6 years I've been able to get someone from Danila-Dilba twice, so this is really exciting. Because they're very busy, not because they don't like us. Yeah? Anyone else? No? You're going to regret it. Too nervous? No? Okay. Well, that's fair enough. You can ask Nick and Shani a little bit about what they do, perhaps. That might be, rather than the big questions like Veronica. Yeah.
I wasn't here for the beginning.
Is that,
Yeah.
Yeah. Just say who you are, Dal. So.
Oh, my name's Rachel. I'm studying nursing. Is it just in Darwin or in the Northern Territory, or are you also? Oh,
So yeah, it's just the Greater Darwin area. So basically, if you follow it, it's the Uluru region. I murder that every time I say it. Runs from down to the Adelaide River. So, but we're looking at opening up a clinic as far as south as Humpty Doo this year. So, yeah. Yeah.
So it is for the Greater Darwin area, and it's still a little bit of a mystery to me, even after all these years, why it took so long for Darwin, which was the forefront of much Indigenous activism, to get their own medical, Aboriginal community-controlled health service. It's really interesting, considering Congress in Alice Springs was like the second in the country, only just tipped at the post by Redfern in Sydney. So it's interesting, really, really interesting. But yeah, like it's amazing. As Fiona, one of the doctors, said, to come from that little room in McLaughlin Street, like literally, it was an old house, to this organisation that's spread all over the Greater Darwin area. Thank you, Taylor. Is there any research project that the clinic is involved in? I think that's because I know over the years this has been a bit of a it's been a challenge. Organisations or people wanting to do research that involves Danila Dilba, but from my perspective, it's primarily about capacity, isn't it, and what you can actually do.
Well, at the moment, we've got a research officer currently conducting on rheumatic heart disease with telethon kids. So that's over the last year. Oh, sorry, that's been over it's at the halfway mark for it, but it's gone out over a year. It's hard to get researchers into the primary healthcare environment only because it creates one of those barriers towards people actually receiving primary healthcare and that, and it's pretty invasive. So
and it's also about funding, isn't it? Because your funding largely is program specific, so it's about having the funding to conduct your own research.
Yeah, it is part of that. But Danila Dilba with Shani and that with CQI and that benchmark things very well, and we're actually able to monitor, what is
quality improvement.
Yeah. And how best to tackle what's currently happening. But yeah, no, mainly large research and all that sort of thing is on the periphery, and sort of if we can get somebody who has the cultural competencies to do it, then it has to be bridged at a high level, especially like around the board level and that. So yeah.
Yes. I think that's probably something else that people may not be aware of, and I will go into this a little bit more, but it came out quite a few, it was said in various ways in the video, that the community control is really the key. Like, it's the fundamental underpinning of how and why organisations like this work. Shani, do you want to say just a little bit more about the community control aspect in regard to Danila Dilba? You don't have to if you don't want to, but really you do. No.
Well, yeah, it's just basically what they said on the video. It's about having local people, having local input, and I think it is important because when you're working in the clinic or you're working in administration, it doesn't matter where you're working, if you're not on the ground, you don't really understand what's going on, and even as clinicians working on the ground, we only have, a little bit of oversight of what's going on. So it's good to have the community people telling us what else is going on, such as, like whether there's ice problems in their community, those kinds of things that we need to know of, which sort of paves the way to what programs we're going to do and what resources we're going to allocate where. It's just like the syphilis outbreak as well. So it's just important to get that community input so we can have better health outcomes.
So, and I think, like, the board isn't sitting there somewhere in Danila Dilba running things. Like, they're not an operational board. It's about the broader strategic directions. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's not about the day-to-day operational stuff. It's about the broader strategic directions. And there was a very brief mention of AMSANT. So you need to get clear in your own mind what the relationship between Danila Dilba and AMSANT is, the Aboriginal Medical Service Alliance of the Northern Territory. Shame on Pat for missing out alliance. Have to growl her next time I see it. So AMSANT is the overarching body for the ARCHOs in the Northern Territory. So it's they're the advocacy representative strategic direction type body, but AMSANT themselves don't provide direct services. They have programs, but they don't provide direct health services. That's what Danila Dilba does. People clear on that? Because, as I said before, often we get people using the two organisations and talking about AMSANT providing health services, but they don't provide direct services as such. Now, any other questions before? I can see lots of chair twirling, so people must be ready for a little break. Yes.
I'll ask one more question then.
You go for it, girl.
So in the body of people that are employed, what would you say would be the percentage of people from Indigenous backgrounds working as opposed to non-Indigenous? And are there kind of, what's the game plan to get people from Indigenous backgrounds into employment there?
64?
Yeah, 60-40.
So we're at 60-40 Indigenous, so 60 Indigenous. We've done a lot to do that. So we've done employee branding. We've had lots of consultants come in and let us know how we can better sell ourselves. So that's why we've got a lot of YouTube videos. You know, so just trying to get people to understand what Genealogy is about, how we can benefit them, and how Indigenous people should be encouraged to get employment with us. With our employment strategies, it's Indigenous first. So a lot of our positions are identified, and yeah, so if we can't get anyone Indigenous within that first round, then we'll go to the second round and open it up to anyone else. So yeah, that's.
And I think, like, I don't know about your current CEO because I haven't had much to do with her recently, but certainly when Pat Anderson was the CEO, she was very much of the opinion that about working in partnership, and you work with the, of course, Indigenous first, but it was very much about working with the people that had the required capacity and skill set.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's probably still the case from what I can gather. So, for many reasons, it's never going to be an Indigenous only employee set for many reasons. But the key thing is Indigenous control. Yeah.
Yeah.
And managing the decisions. So yeah. Any other questions? Anyone else online? No? Okay, look, what we're going to do now is, people online, we're going to have a little break. I don't know why I keep looking at that because there's no camera. We're going to have a little break, but before we go on our little break, I would like to, one, thank Shani and Nick very much for coming in, because particularly Shani, I gather you've got like about 5 jobs at the moment. So, really, really appreciate both of you giving up your time and talking to your future workforce. So, I think it's a really exciting thing. So thank you very, very much. You can type clapping and the rest of us will clap. Gloria, I'm going to talk a bit more about the funding a bit later. Now, so like a 10-minute break, your mob, online, and we'll, if we can just take a photo of these two with all of you before you go and have your break, that'd be great. So see you in 10 minutes, people online. Okay, let's get started again. Phones away. I know, mean of me, isn't it? But I was in a class the other day that shall remain nameless, and there were 3 people sitting in the front row while I was speaking on their phones. I'm not looking at you. Which I find a little, well, not to put too fine a point on it, it's rude. Anyway, maybe that's just me. I'm starting to sound like my mother now. Has everyone signed the class list? Now, I've had a couple of people online, we know who you are, that's fine. I've had a couple of people querying the class list. Now, it's not to be used as a punitive or, way of punishing people if you can't turn up. It's really, as I was saying to Hannah before, it's really just, we just need to keep a bit of a record. So if the outside chance there's a student complaint or something happens, we can say, well, no wonder you didn't get the mark or pass or whatever, because you didn't attend class. So that's one of the reasons. So it's just keeping an eye on who's coming and